Hey guys, today I'm going to do a video about my experience with birth trauma. Um, Disclaimer, I was going to do a video about weight gain and sort of like another body image video. I've been getting a lot of really not very nice comments about my weight lately, and I never really have talked in depth about that, which I do plan to make a video about that. And spoiler alert, a lot of it is related to an eating disorder that I was diagnosed with recently that I'm healing from. But I've tried to sit down a couple times to make that video, and I just don't think I'm ready. It's like just something that I feel still very vulnerable about and very fragile, and I'm trying to work through a lot of feelings. And so there's just been, I don't know, it's just been hard to be on the internet lately because I have been getting some really mean comments about my weight, and that's just been kind of hard lately. But at the same time, it's like I'm doing actually really well in a lot of ways. Like I feel very at peace with my body, and I feel like I'm in a really good place with healing from my eating disorder. So I don't know. I will go in depth on that soon, but I'm just not ready yet. So when I'm ready, I'm gonna open up about that. But I was praying about it because I didn't know if I wanted to make a video today. And I was like, God, what do you want me to make a video about? What can I talk about? What would be helpful? And the thing that kept coming up was birth trauma. And I do feel ready to talk about this. It's been about a year since my birth, or 15 months. Well, my son's birth, not mine. It's been 30 years since my birth. But so I do want to talk about my birth trauma today. Because I don't know, I just feel like this is something that is sort of taboo. It's not really talked about that much. And I want to go into all of that today. So yeah, trigger warning, this is going to be talking about birth trauma. So if that's something that's triggering to you, then probably should skip this video. Okay, so let's go back to the beginning. Really wanted, and I did, also a disclaimer, I did make a video about my birth story, so I might be glossing over some of the details in that, but this is more specifically going into the traumatic part, which was after I gave birth mainly. I watched the video again to see what I had already said, and I barely even went into any of this stuff, and I left out a lot of details because I just wasn't ready to really share them. So that's what I'm gonna be doing today. So I think also, if you hear noise in the background, my washer is being really loud. I'm washing my sheets, so just ignore that. It literally sounds like a rainstorm. Oh my gosh, I hope that's not too loud. Just think of it like nice white noise while you're watching this video, okay? Okay, so with my birth, I want to take it back to when I even first got pregnant. I was so excited. I was so excited to be pregnant. So excited that I was a mom and just to go on a motherhood journey. I've always felt really, really called to motherhood, and it was a big part of my vocation, what God wanted for me. So I was super happy that when I found out that I was pregnant, and then when I found out that it was twins, I was just even more kind of in shock, in awe, excited, just, I don't know, nervous. And one of the things they tell you when you're pregnant with twins is basically, anything that could go wrong is a lot more likely to go wrong. And it makes sense if you think about it. Your body is under basically twice the amount of stress. In my case, I had 2 placentas, which the placentas themselves, if you don't know, it's like an organ that provides nutrition and stuff to the baby, or in my case, babies. So the placentas themselves, you have 2 of them. You have twice as much fluid, the blood flow increases more in your body, the hormones are even crazier, you're usually sicker, there's just a lot of things that with twins are more intense. And so I was told that I was gonna need a lot more appointments. I was gonna have to go see a high risk doctor, which is a maternal fetal specialist, and just kind of check in with them throughout the pregnancy. So knowing all this, I'm naturally kind of an anxious person, and I was really scared of something going wrong pretty much the entire time. Every time I had an appointment, I was terrified that I was gonna hear bad news. And so I went to God and I prayed a lot about my pregnancy, about my birth, and I wrote out in my prayer journal so many prayers about I really wanted a healthy pregnancy. I wanted this birth that was beautiful, that just was powerful and uplifting. My older sister and my younger sister had both had like really traumatic first births as well. And so I just was like, that I was very aware that that was a possibility. And I was like, God, I pray, I know it's twins and it's, you know, there's a lot more things that can go wrong, but I just pray that I would have a good birth experience. And I was really intentional about writing that out in my prayer journal. So that was sort of the background that I came from. And I was also really thankful because all throughout my pregnancy, it was super healthy. Everything looked good. My blood pressure was good. The babies looked great. They were growing. There was no issues. Any of the things like that you would worry about with twins, like nothing was really happening that was bad, which was a huge relief because I was very, very nervous about that. So I basically ended up giving birth to them at 36 weeks, which I go into way more detail on their birth in my birth video. So if you want more details on their actual birth, then you should watch that video. But I kind of wanted to talk, I guess I can just briefly talk about that if you haven't seen that video, and then I'll kind of go into more of what I want to talk about, which is the birth trauma. So I gave birth at 36 weeks, which was not the plan. The doctor had said that I could go until 38 weeks and then I would be induced. So I was like, okay, that's pretty good. Like for twins, that seems like a good amount of time. And like I said, my whole pregnancy, I was super healthy, no issues, no problems. And then right at 36 weeks, I went in for my checkup and my blood pressure had jumped up just a little bit, but it was enough that they were like, we need to keep an eye on this. So I got a blood pressure cuff from my brother-in-law, who's an EMT, and I checked my blood pressure again that night. It had gone up again. I checked it the next morning. It had gone up even higher, and they were like, you need to go to labor and delivery. So I was induced at 36 weeks and they also found like protein in my urine. My liver enzymes were off. So there was like multiple signs that my body was developing preeclampsia. Or basically, I guess those are probably the main signs. So again, birth, whole long thing that I already went into where it was 30 hours long and, well, I think more than 30, I don't even know. I checked into the hospital on a Friday at like noon. I guess it was more like 48 hours, honestly, but it's hard to know when you really say that labor started because I was on Pitocin. So I checked in on a Friday at like noon, and then I had the twins at like 11 a.m. on the following Sunday. So I had the twins. I got to have them vaginally, which was a huge blessing because I was definitely nervous about having to have a C-section, but I was able to have them vaginally, which was great and a huge blessing. And I kind of think I felt like I was on a high after that. Like, oh my gosh, I had the babies. Like, I did it. I'm so happy. But shortly after I gave birth, things kind of already started to decline. And I didn't know what I was in for, but I think I kind of had a feeling that things were not quite in a good place. And there's two different elements to that. One is my health and one is my son Leo's health. So my first son, who was born Dominic, he was totally fine, healthy, not really any problems. Like he had a tiny bit of jaundice, but I feel like that's very normal in babies. He didn't have to go to the NICU. So Dominic spent the entire time in the hospital with me and my husband Max in our hospital room. And then Leo, my second son who was born, and I talked about this a little bit in the video, but Leo was born, he was not breathing, he was purple. He was just like very, like it took like, I don't know, at least 30 seconds for them to like resuscitate him. And it was very scary. So his oxygen was not good when he was born. And then his blood sugar was low. He had feeding issues. So he had to be in the NICU for, it ended up being like about a week from when I had him to when I had him on a Sunday. We didn't go home until the following Saturday. So it was about a week total that he was in there. So those two parallels, those are the sort of things that made this really, really challenging. And also, I wanted to say two things about birth trauma before I kind of go into this more. Well, actually, I'll just say one thing. I didn't even really, and then I'll say the other one later. I didn't even really know that I had birth trauma still. I kind of thought I was over it because I wasn't like crying about it anymore or anything, and I didn't feel as depressed. But then this summer, my sister, Christina, had her daughter, Tristan, and she was talking about like being at the hospital and if anyone wanted to come visit. And I was thinking about like, should I go visit her? And I started having a panic attack and I started like shaking and crying. And the thought of going to a hospital where someone had just given birth, like really, really freaked me out. It made me feel very like unsafe. So that was kind of when I knew like, okay, I need to take this to my therapist. I need to like dive into this a little bit more. So anyway, I just given birth to my sons. Leo was whisked away to the NICU. So I barely even, after I had him, I held him for like, I don't know, a minute or two, and then they took him away. So I didn't really have Leo at all after giving birth. And then I had, I think Dominic, they took him away for a couple hours and we're checking things out on him just cause, you know, he was born early and stuff. But then he was great. So then he was able to go back to the hospital room with me and my husband. And for a minute, I was just kind of like, yay, like we did it, we made it. And we had these super nice nurses, I remember. And they were like, congratulations. They were helping me out with like trying to, you know, breastfeed with Dominic. And I was like pumping some colostrum for Leo so they could send it to the NICU. And I just remember like sitting in the room and just being like so happy that I had given birth to my sons. They were both, you know, for the most part healthy. Leo's stuff, it didn't seem like super life-threatening. So I wasn't super worried about like his well-being as much. I was just more sad to be away from him. So in those first 2 days, the first thing we noticed is that my blood pressure was not stabilizing. And there's this sort of myth that goes around that preeclampsia is cured with delivery, which I think in most cases is true. But there actually are a small amount of women, it's not as common, but they develop postpartum preeclampsia, and that was me. So my blood pressure was not stabilizing after I gave birth. It was slowly going higher and higher. And so that was scary, and that kind of made me anxious because I was like, why isn't it going down? I delivered the twins. Like, I just wanted to be healthy, and I wanted to just focus on my sons. I didn't want to think about my own health because I just felt overwhelmed, like taking care of this one baby that was with me and then also having this other baby who was literally 7 floors away from us in the NICU. So it was just really overwhelming, like kind of having that on my mind. And then my health is also not in a great place. And I was just like, what's going on here? So one of the first things that was really hard was a nurse that I had. And I don't know that I want to share every detail about that, but maybe just a few things. So if anyone else out there has experienced this, you kind of can understand like, I don't know, just what I went through, and hopefully you feel like you're not alone if you went through this too. But this one nurse that I had her for like, I think 3 different 12-hour shifts. And looking back, and people have said this to me before too, like I should have just got a different nurse. And I didn't even really know that was an option at the time. And I don't know, I think I was also very just like brain dead from giving birth. So I didn't really know that was an option, honestly. And so this nurse, she made a lot of comments that were really hurtful to me. So one of the things about my health was that because my blood pressure wasn't going down, sorry, I'm just checking to make sure my sons didn't wake up. They were increasing my medication. So I was on these beta blockers, which it's really weird to me because people say beta blockers are supposed to make you chill because they're supposed to lower your blood pressure. And I don't know what was going on with my body, and maybe this was more related to the preeclampsia, but they did not make me chill. They made me the opposite of chill. And I actually did some research on this, and there was some studies that showed like people who had beta blockers had like, some of them were more likely to like experience like depression and panic attacks. And that is definitely what I experienced. So like, as soon as they started increasing the doses, I started to feel really weird. And I don't know if it's because like my doctor was saying like, oh, your heart is like, I don't know, regulating or something. Like it's just sort of adjusting to this like new medication, and it should get better after that. And I talked to my brother-in-law who's also on blood pressure medicine. He said he had like, also it was hard for his body to like first adjust to it. But for me, I had like these tremors where I was like uncontrollably shaking, and I would like pick up my water cup and I would spill it all over my hospital gown. And that just kept happening. Like I remember I had them bringing in like a pile of hospital gowns because I just kept spilling water all over myself, and my hands were like really, really shaky. And I had to just have my husband eventually just hold my water for me. So it was really weird. I didn't feel stable, and that made me scared about like, every time I tried to like hold my son to nurse him, I was just like I just felt, and I had like shivers, like I was like shivering uncontrollably, but I wasn't cold. It was really weird. And then every time I tried to go to sleep at night, I couldn't sleep because I had this like massive like feeling like I was having a panic attack every single night. And the most I ever slept, if I slept at all, was an hour to an hour and a half that week that I was in the hospital. So I wasn't sleeping at all. And I remember like laying back in the chair, and I like I would try to fall asleep and I would suddenly start getting this like really shaky feeling, like my body was just like, ooh. It's so hard to describe. And I remember there was one day I even wondered if I was having a seizure. I've never had a seizure before, but I remember I woke up and I like felt paralyzed in my body, and I tried to like talk to Max, but I remember I was like, I couldn't get the words to come out, and it was really, really strange and really disorienting. And another thing was that, I don't know if this is because I just delivered the babies, or also I was awake for like 2 nights before I even gave birth, and I was like throwing up a lot. So it's hard to know, like, was I just super physically weak from what I experienced with the delivery, or was it like the beta blockers messing with me? But like, I also do think it is the beta blockers, because like I remember weeks later, I had to be on them for 6 weeks. And I remember I had gone to the grocery store and I was so excited to get out of the house and just walk around for a little bit, because I was like, I don't know, 4 or 5 weeks postpartum, and I had like barely left the house. And I could not walk around the grocery store. I was getting extremely like dizzy and lightheaded and felt like I was gonna pass out. So I felt like that on steroids when I was on the beta blockers in the hospital. It was just like this horrible feeling of like unsteadiness and like I was gonna pass out. So this nurse, I don't know what it was. It was like she treated me like I was making up my symptoms, or I was exaggerating, or I was being dramatic. And I would go down to see my son Leo in the NICU, and one of the times I was like, oh, I'm just gonna walk. And Max was like, are you sure you wanna walk? And I was like, yeah, it's fine. So I tried walking down there, and I felt like I was going to pass out the entire time. And I was like, I don't think I should be walking. It was like 7 floors down, and it was kind of a long walk. So I ended up getting a wheelchair and being wheeled down just because I felt so like dizzy and unstable, like I was gonna pass out. And this nurse, she looked at me. Max was like, hey, can I get a wheelchair for my wife? And she looked at me and she's like, why do you need a wheelchair? She's like, we normally save these for women that had C-sections. Is there a reason that you need this wheelchair? And I was like, I just feel like really dizzy and like I'm gonna pass out, and I just don't feel like I should really be walking. And she was just like, well, that's not good. You're not supposed to feel that way. Like, that's not normal at all. Like, it was very like dismissive the way she was talking to me. Like I was just making things up. I feel like I was being gaslit. I feel like that word is kind of thrown around a lot, but it was like someone was kind of like denying my own like bodily experience, which was really hard. Kind of getting shaky as I'm talking about this. I'm like, and then also as my blood pressure was like rising and stuff, she sat down with me and my husband one day, which I thought this was really inappropriate, because it was like, you're not my OB. My OB is the one who was overseeing me and like my health the whole time. Like, she's the one who's in charge. But this nurse that came in and closed the door, and she's like sitting down looking at my chart, and she's like, because I had a blood pressure cuff on my arm the entire week, going off every 15 minutes. That was another part of why I couldn't sleep, because I was hooked up to so many machines that were like squeezing my arm and like just made me feel extremely uncomfortable, and IVs and stuff. And she was just like, I don't know why your doctor still has you here. Like, I don't think your blood pressure is that bad. Like, I don't understand why she's just keeping you here for extra days. And I was just like, I mean, she's clearly concerned. I don't know. I'm not a doctor. Like, it was like the way she was saying it, it made us both feel like she was just kind of like, I don't know. It was like we were being dramatic, or we wanted to be there. And I'm like, I don't want to be here. Like, I want to go home. I don't want to be in a hospital. It was the weirdest experience. And she even went so far to give me this lecture about like, you know, I know your type. You're like my sister, and I know you have anxiety, and you're just like being way too in your head about things, and you're just Googling things. And, you know, I'm not trying to diagnose you with, you know, postpartum anxiety, but, you know, you just need to relax. And it was like, I don't know, maybe she was trying to be helpful, but the way she said it was very condescending and very like, just like, you need to calm down. You're being dramatic. And I was just very like fragile at that point, that it was really hard to like have this person like denying everything that I was feeling and going through in such a like abrasive way. And literally like a few hours after she gave me that whole speech about she didn't think I needed to be there, and that, I don't know, my doctor was being dramatic or something, my blood pressure rose to like 170 over 110, and I had to be transferred to a different unit to get a magnesium drip, which is like a treatment they give you to prevent you from going into like having a seizure. So it was serious, and I did have postpartum preeclampsia, and it's just, I don't know why she was trying to like deny that or underplay it. It was very, very strange, but it really bothered me because I was struggling a lot emotionally and having all those like physical symptoms and anxiety. And I felt like this very like abrasive person was like trying to deny my experience. So that was a big part of the trauma. And then the magnesium drip, and then also the NICU, which I'm going to go into both of those. So my blood pressure was not stabilizing after several days. It was getting higher and higher. It got to the point of like, you could have a seizure, you could have a stroke. They wheeled me down to a separate floor. And I remember one of the first things that the nurse there said to me was, "Oh, I'm really sorry that you have to do this. This is not going to feel good. These are just really not good. So I'm sorry that you have to go through this." And I was like, what is about to happen to my body? When they said magnesium, I said this in my other video, but like, I kind of thought like, oh, magnesium, it's like a vitamin. They're just probably giving me like a vitamin, like calms you down. I don't know. And it was not a vitamin. Anyone who's had a magnesium drip or like preeclampsia knows like magnesium is like the way they treat you is they put an IV in your arm, and this, you immediately feel this hot sensation coming up your arm and into your back. And it just, your body spreads this like fiery hot, like it kind of feels like your body's on fire a little bit. It's really uncomfortable. And then you also get these like very flu-like symptoms, like really, really nauseous. I had a really bad headache. I just felt like, literally like I had the flu. That's how I felt. And that's what they told me to expect. And I did feel that way for 24 hours. And basically they're literally pumping all this magnesium into your body, and it's pulling fluid out of your body. So like, I remember the nurse was like, there was like a bag on the floor of like all this fluid and that was coming out of me through like a catheter. She was like, "We just pulled a liter of fluid out of your body." And I was like, and they weren't even done. And like, when I look at pictures from like the couple days after that I had given birth, like I look like a puffy balloon. Like there was so much fluid in my body because I was so swollen. And I don't know, I feel like preeclampsia, like a lot of people don't know about it, or it's just, oh, you know, preeclampsia, people just don't really talk about it or know what it is really. And honestly, I'm not the most educated person on it, but like I watched a few other videos from other women that had preeclampsia, and because it was so comforting to like hear other people's stories and know that I wasn't alone. And it was terrifying hearing what other women had been through who had like almost had a stroke or like a heart attack. Like it can cause severe complications, and it's really like a serious thing. You don't want to have it. So I was just like, oh, why is this happening to me? So the other element of what was really hard about this whole thing was that my son, Leo, was in the NICU. And I would say this was worse than all the physical stuff that I was going through. It was hard because I felt like my heart was being split in half, because one of my sons was up with me, Dominic, and I was so happy to get to spend time with him. But I felt this immense guilt and sadness that my other son was down in the NICU. And it was like every time I went to visit Leo, I had to leave Dominic up in the nursery with the nurses. Which it's like, yes, I know he's perfectly fine and safe and the nurses are, you know, great. But it still is really hard to leave your baby to go see your other baby and then leave that baby to come back. It's like, I just felt like very conflicted and very guilty. And I remember when I went in to visit Leo in the NICU, I just felt this sense of like, I don't know, I just felt like I was a bad mom, because you hear about people saying like their child was in the NICU and they were with them like 24/7, and I literally could not do that. Like I was up on a separate floor, it's like 7 floors higher. I was being treated for my own issues, and I was honestly kind of like, in the moment, I know it's not logical, but in the moment I was mad at my body, and I was like, why is my blood pressure not going down? Just go down. I remember watching techniques on YouTube of like, I feel like it sounds kind of crazy now, but I remember I was like trying anything I could think of to get my blood pressure to go down, because all I wanted was to be with my son in the NICU and like take care of him and get out of this dang hospital room. Like, and also too, that was hard because Dominic wasn't even allowed to be in the NICU, so I couldn't bring him down. They couldn't be together. But I just remember going into the NICU, like in my wheelchair, and I would see Leo, my baby, and he was this tiny little guy. He was only 5 pounds at birth, and then he lost weight and he was like 4 pounds something. So he was tiny, and he was all like hooked up to all these wires and like just covered, and like they have him in this little like incubator. It's like a plastic box. And I remember when I first saw him and it hit me like, my son is down here. And yes, there's nurses that come by and stuff, and they, obviously take care of him and stuff, but like, they have other babies they're taking care of. They can't just sit there and hold your baby 24/7. And a lot of parents, they get to do that and be the one, you know, to hold the baby 24/7. And luckily Max was able to go down and do skin to skin with Leo quite a bit, but it also wasn't me. And I just felt like, I don't know, it doesn't make sense, but I felt like a failure as a mom, and I felt like inadequate because I only could really visit him twice a day because they had to keep me in my room with the blood pressure and stuff to be monitored all the time. And then I had to go do the magnesium treatment. It was like, and I had to be taking care of Dominic. So it was like every time, like I wasn't even really supposed to leave that much. And every time I like wasn't with him, I just felt so much guilt and sadness. And I would just look at him in his little box and like, I would just bawl my eyes out every time I went there and left. And I was really embarrassed because there was other people around me. So I was trying really hard not to like, because no one else was really crying, but I just like could not stop crying because I felt so sad. And I remember like holding Leo and just saying to him, like, you have a brother upstairs and he loves you. And I promise that you're going to get better soon and you're going to get to be with him. And, I was like, we're all gonna get to be together as a family one day, and just keep being strong, keep passing your tests. Like I remember just like holding him and like talking to him and being like, you're gonna get through this. Like just keep being strong and keep like, you're doing great, and you're gonna meet your brother, and we're all gonna be together. And all I could think about was like us being together as a family of 4. And in my mind, I was just like, when I can get out of this hospital and just leave all this behind, then I can be with my sons and my husband and just like, I'll be at peace and I'll be happy and everything's going to be okay. So I just was waiting and waiting. And thankfully on the last day, Friday, I got cleared. My blood pressure, it wasn't perfect, but it was stable after the magnesium drip. And then Leo, he was doing a lot better. All the issues that he had, everything was like, he was passing all of his tests. He was doing great. So we both got basically the clear to go home like late on Friday, but they asked us, they're like, would you like to stay one more night? We have like a suite and it's like families can stay in there. So we have like a nurse that'll come and like monitor you and help you. And we were like, yes, we would love to stay in the suite so we can like get some help. Cause we were both really nervous about what is life going to be like going like home as new parents of 2, not only like 2 babies, but 2 like premature babies, like especially with Leo being so small and he just had health issues. Like I was just nervous. So we stayed in this suite, and honestly, I don't really know why they have people stay there. There wasn't even really a bed in there. It was like, there was a chair that you could recline, and there was like a military cot that went like completely horizontal without any type of like support. So like I was still really sore in my stomach because I was in labor for like over 30 hours and just like not feeling good. So I was like, I cannot like sleep on this cot. So I remember just sitting back in the chair and like reclining. And again, I was still on that blood pressure medicine, so I still felt really bad. Couldn't really sleep. Slept like an hour that night. But I remember that night, I was so happy that like at first that we were all together, and it was this high for a moment. And then it kind of hit me like all the like worrying about my own health and like worrying about how am I going to be capable enough to take care of these two sons, and like what if something's really wrong with me? Like what if my blood pressure is not that good? Like what if because I'd heard like you can die from preeclampsia, and like women will go home after postpartum preeclampsia and just like die. Like I know that sounds really morbid, but that is like truly how I felt and what I was really afraid of. And I remember in the little suite, like I started like hyperventilating and like panicking, and I was like, Max, I think there's something really wrong with me. I think I need to go to the ER. Like what if like I'm having like a stroke? Like what if my blood pressure is really bad? Like I don't think I'm ready. I can't do this. And Max, being the wise, calm, grounded person he is, was able to recognize, he's like, Catherine, I don't think that your health is like in danger. I think you're having a panic attack. He's been with me for years, and like he knows how my anxiety works and stuff, and he was able to recognize that. And I was just like, okay, you're right. I think you're right. And I remember I was like, this is actually me quoting Cimarelli's song, but I was like, I just need to make it like through this night and get through to the morning, and when the sun comes up, I know everything's going to be okay. And yeah, so then I got to go home on Saturday, and I was really happy. And there was still a lot of challenges when I went home, which maybe I'll make another video about that later, because I ended up having like postpartum depression and anxiety, and I did have a pretty rough transition into motherhood, which really surprised me because I really love being a mom and I always wanted to be a mom. I think a lot of it really did stem from the birth trauma that I experienced. Just I've never been hospitalized in my life, and I felt very deeply unsafe, like physically and also like emotionally, mainly because of that one nurse I told you about. So yeah, I think a lot of that contributed to me having a lot of panic and a lot of hard times postpartum as well. I am happy to say though, I am 15 months postpartum. I don't know if that's still postpartum, but my sons are 15 months old now, and I do feel so much better about a lot of things. Like I feel better about being a mom. I feel relaxed, a lot more confident. I'm trying really hard to, day to day to like not give in and not give in to mom guilt and feeling like I'm a failure because I'm not perfect, or like, oh, I'm not able to give enough of myself because I have, twins and they're always like, everything's always split. So yeah, I'm still working on it, but I just wanted to open up and talk about this because the whole thing about birth trauma that makes me really sad is how incredibly isolating it is. I remember when I was pregnant, hearing from some of these moms, and they would say, I don't know why these moms are going around and scaring other moms and sharing, all their horror stories. Like, how could you do that to a pregnant mom? And how could you do that to a new mom? And I remember I agreed with them. I was like, yeah, that seems weird. Like, what are you trying to do? Scare them out of ever giving birth? Like, why would someone do that? Like, it seemed really inconsiderate to me. And I was just like, yeah, I don't want people sharing their horror stories with me. Like, that's just inconsiderate. That's really how I felt until I became one of those horror stories, or a reminder of one of those horror stories. And then it just feels like, oh, like, you don't want to hear my story. Like, I'm sorry that my story is so bad that it's like the thing that you don't want to happen to you. And like, basically what happened to me is like your worst nightmare, or like, one of the things that you're just like, it's really hard being a living reminder of what someone doesn't want to happen to them. You're just like, well, I really wanted a positive birth story too. And when my friends have, positive births, I am genuinely so happy for them. But it's also hard for me to hear about birth because no matter how positive or negative, I always get this like sort of shaky feeling. And I am in therapy, I'm working on it. I'm trying to like process the trauma. And I've been doing that specifically with my therapist, making like a trauma timeline. But it's just really hard. And I don't know how long it's going to take or how much, therapy it's going to take for me to like fully heal from what I experienced, because it was just really scary and it was really isolating and overwhelming, and I just felt like very alone. And then in the aftermath, it was like I tried to tell my story, and I did tell it to a few people, but it just seemed like a lot of people didn't really want to hear it, which is fine. Like, you don't have to hear my story, and that's like totally okay. And I'm thinking whoever's watching this video is okay with hearing, a traumatic birth story. And I actually really liked watching those videos after I gave birth, because I was just like, oh my gosh, I'm not the only one. And I just wanted to reach through. I actually did message a few people on Instagram that I watched their YouTube videos, and I just wanted to like hug them and be like, you're not alone. And all of our stories are different. And some people, experience way worse things than I did. I just have my own specific trauma. That's all I can really speak to. But it's just, birth is such a tender time, and you feel so vulnerable, and you want your body to be okay. You want your baby to be okay. Like, or in my case, babies, like there's just a lot to worry about, and it feels very fragile. So it's really hard when you don't feel safe. And I definitely didn't in a lot of ways. But yeah, I just wanted to share that. And I wanted to say, like, if you have experienced birth trauma, like, you're not alone, and it's okay. Like, I know some people are scared of that and they don't want to hear it, and that's okay. That's totally their right. It's not everyone has to hear it. But I think talking to other moms who've experienced birth trauma, it's like you realize that you're not alone, and it's very healing to be able to like open up and share and not just feel like you're just a walking horror story or something. Like, you're just a person, and you wanted a good birth, and maybe it didn't really feel like it was good, but there's still beauty in it. I look back to my birth story, and I did share a lot of the hard things in this video, but like, if you watch my birth story, like, there were some really powerful moments where I felt God's presence very strongly, and some very spiritual aspects as well, where like, even in like the suffering and the hardship, like, God was very present to me. And that was really beautiful. And I know people love to say like, well, as long as you have a healthy baby, and like, that is the most dismissive thing you can say to a woman that's experienced birth trauma. It's like, of course she's happy that her baby is healthy. Of course, like everyone wants a healthy baby. But saying that to her, it sort of has this tone of like, well, it doesn't matter if you felt scared for your life or, you know, traumatized, or just your birth was exactly the opposite of what you wanted, because you had a healthy baby. So that's all that matters. It's like, it's just a very dismissive thing. So, yes, I am super grateful that I have 2 healthy sons, and it is the biggest blessing from God, and I'm so happy. But I also think that it's important to talk about these things, especially for other moms who also have birth trauma, just to know that you're not alone, and it can be so isolating. But if you've been through this, I really encourage you to seek help. Talking it through with my therapist has helped me immensely, helped me feel a lot more safe. I think I still have more work to do, but I'm at a place now where I don't feel quite as triggered about it. I might even be able to go to a hospital at some point and see it's someone in there, you know, visit someone, and maybe I won't feel so scared to do that. And also for my, you know, I'd love to have more kids in the future. And for my next birth, I'm really hoping that it'll be a positive experience, because that's what I'm really, really hoping for. So anyway, hope you guys enjoyed this video. And thank you for listening to my story. And I hope that this helped someone out there, because I really felt like this is what God was calling me to talk about today. So anyway, thank you for watching. And as always, thank you for being here. I really appreciate it. And yeah, hope you guys have a great Christmas and day. Bye.